Good. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday.
Mhm.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We will go through some small-ish slides together.
And I think we'll leave a lot of room if people want for questions, I think, since it's such a hard month.
Absolutely.
Hard
We can absolutely leave room for questions.
for many of
Um, yeah, and I know, and I know we had some people send in some questions too, so we'll get to those at the end as well. But like I was saying, spring is a really, really tough month, a really tough seasonal transition. So we'll go over like what the energetics are exactly. But once you know this and once you can kind of assimilate this knowledge, you'll never look at this seasonal transition the same again. It really does make such a big difference to your knowledge, to understand what exactly is going on in nature, how is that being mirrored in our physiology, and how can we use this energy that is actually really challenging to our benefit. It is here to support you and it is here to guide you in a really meaningful way throughout the rest of the year. But oftentimes when we don't know what to do with it, it can feel really frustrating. It can feel really challenging and really difficult. And I often see people either get sick or really burn out in the spring. So there's a lot of things that we can do to prevent this from happening. So I'm going to show you this visual of the five element system. And once this visual, it seems like on the surface level, maybe kind of simple, but when you start to really understand the energy dynamics of the five element system, you can predict weather patterns, you can predict the different seasonal changes, you can predict pathology of diseases. It is absolutely fascinating to see that these energy dynamics really do fall under certain patterns and things are very cyclical. And that what happens in the external world really matches what's happening in our internal world. These ancient TCM philosophers, traditional Chinese medicine, really understood really deeply the concepts of nature and how we are deeply intertwined with it. So these are the five elements: water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. And each element is associated with a different season, with different organ systems, with different emotions, with different tastes and colors. And everything really in our experience can be categorized into these five different sections. And we're going to kind of go over like where we've been in the energy of winter, where we're currently going, which is spring, and the ultimate manifestation of summer. So we have currently been down here in this water area, this winter area. And water is the most yin. We have yin and yang in traditional Chinese medicine, and these concepts are opposite, but they are also deeply intertwined. So yin is slow, it is stagnant, it is isolating, it is like exactly what you think of New England winter. It is isolating. The days are short. You don't have as much energy. You just want to hibernate and have soup. And that's very intentional. Yin is cold. It's very isolating. We're conserving our energy. If you think about a bear hibernating in the woods, that is the most yin. It's not really having all the energy to support us through tons of connections or really physical exercise. And even our bodies, our digestive systems prefer really warm foods at this time because they're easier to assimilate. We don't have the digestive fire at this point to be eating tons of salads or raw foods. So we really gravitate towards soups and teas and warm foods. And as we transition, you can see right by this circle, we see this arrow that's pointing up towards the wood circle, the liver and the gallbladder. And our wood energy, everything gets generated from the previous cycle. This is where you see the circle going around in these arrows. Going in this clockwise circle is that every next element comes from the previous element. So in the winter, when we are resting and we are grounding and we are really regulating our nervous systems and we're taking this time of deep rest within ourselves, ideally we fill this cup up, that the water cup is completely filled. So then it can give and generate into that next cycle, which is the wood cycle. And the wood cycle is very different. This element feels very, very different than water because we're starting to feel a little bit more energy. And I like to call wood the life between lives because we've been in this yin, this dark, this isolation of water. And we're transitioning ultimately into summer, which is the full embodiment of yang. It's tons of energy, it's connection, it's fire, it's being here, there, everywhere. The days are really long. You don't need as much sleep. You feel like you can do a lot more. And the spring is the transition between those two. So it's really just the beginning of this upward rising energy. And for those of us, especially who live in colder climates, when we start to feel this energy rising, it feels amazing. So the difference between this water element and this wood element, like you start to feel like you have life again. Oh my gosh, things are happening. This is amazing. But where people tend to make the mistake, what we're going to talk about today, is that they mistake this upward rising energy as the full manifestation of like what summer would manifest, that I have the most energy, that I can do the most, I can be the most, without realizing that we're really in the middle. And in order to get to that full manifestation, it really requires consistent growth and incremental growth, and having the discipline to recognize like I'm not in that full manifestation yet. As much as I'm restless and as much as I'm itching to be there, I need to slowly grow and change in the spring so I actually can have this full embodiment in the summer. And what you may notice is there's also these arrows that are in the circle. And I'm not going to get too much into this because it does get a little bit complicated. But what you'll see is for this metal element, where the lung and the colon are, there's this arrow pointing towards the wood element. That means that this element, it's a checks and balancing system. So the metal element is making sure the wood element is under control, that the wood element doesn't go too overboard, and the wood element is known to go too overboard. So we have this metal element keeping it in line. The metal element is in charge of our immune system. So if we are going too much too soon in this wood element, this metal element has to step in and say, hey, I need you to slow down. We're not quite there yet. You think we're in summer, we're not. So I'm going to need you to take a step back, and we'll get a cold or we'll get some kind of sickness. This immune system and the metal element will act up, getting the wood element to calm down, ultimately bringing you back to water element, making you rest. So you start to see how, yes, all the coughing. Yes, it's so true. I mean, we start to see it's really, once you understand the energy dynamics of the five element system, it becomes really obvious like what element is stepping in to make sure that this element is calming down. And because wood tends to be way more excessive than the other elements, you get colds that are forcing you to go back into water and to rest. Especially if you spent the winter not fully resting, that's super common. People get colds the beginning of spring or even the beginning of summer, like that metal element stepping in, saying, you've got to calm down, you've got to establish your foundations. Another really common pathology is you'll notice that there's this arrow coming from wood into earth. Another manifestation is if wood is really excessive, all of a sudden we'll start having IBS-like symptoms. We'll have constipation or diarrhea when our nervous systems are kind of getting fried, like we're doing too much. And especially if we're really frustrated, it's going to be taken out on our digestive system. So again, we're starting to see how you can predict how things are going to manifest based off the cycles of nature and the five element system. So I hope that gives a little bit of clarity as to why this energy feels so challenging, because we are really in like the life between lives. We are in the difference of the polarities between winter and summer. And then to note the difference between like summer and going back into winter isn't as tough, and the fall isn't as tough, because in traditional Chinese medicine, we have 5 seasons. There is a whole separate season for late summer. So this is really like your Labor Day weekend, where the summer's winding down and the obligations are winding down. You're starting to slow down a little bit. And you can kind of just like enjoy. It's like 2 or 3 weeks long where this late summer, it's like enjoying the fruits of your labor. You're resting, you're not doing as much. It's very easygoing. It feels very nice before you get into the metal element, which is fall, where you start to feel like a little bit of grief that summer's over and you're heading into winter. This energy, because you have these two elements supporting you, can feel a little bit less harsh than this transition in the spring, which is you only have this like one season to make this polarity transition, and it's intense. So yeah, every single year, there's this always surprises me. I can't believe it. This upward rising energy can feel really dramatic. So what we were just talking about, spring is about growth and structure, which can be challenging to process and implement. We have to continuously remind ourselves, we're not quite there yet. We're not quite in the summer. And how can we honor and acknowledge still the work we did in the winter to slowly grow and not go full gas into tricking our physiology into thinking, we have enough of the energy like the summer. How can we slowly come out of our winter? And it's going to be a little bit painful to take more time than what you think it will, but to have the future summer in mind and to say, this is where I want to be, but I'm not quite there yet. And have the discipline. The liver loves discipline and patience in order to let yourself grow into that rather than waking up tomorrow and saying, this is exactly how I'm going to be. The liver gets so angry and frustrated when we do that to our bodies. So just like we were saying, it's a time that you're going to feel alive again. Like coming out of the winter, you're like, oh my gosh, energy and sunshine and warmth and amazingness. And we do want you to have fun. And so much of the liver energy is creativity and fun, but you do have to remember to balance it. This is definitely the biggest hiccup by far in the spring. So I just want to go over a little bit of like understanding this wood element and understanding the energy dynamics in the spring a little bit more. So the element, of course, as we've gone over, is wood. The color is green. So we'll go over a little bit what that means dietarily, how you can support your diet with wood supportive foods. Traditional Chinese medicine has a whole other philosophy on nutrition in terms of the five elements and what organ systems they can support. So it can be a really beautiful way to look at food. And the nature of this season is yang within yin. So again, we just talked about like we were in the full embodiment of yin and we're starting to notice a little bit of that yang energy. So, and it feels really nice. The organs associated with the liver and the gallbladder. In traditional Chinese medicine, these organs, yes, have their Western pathologies and their Western different physiological aspects. So the liver has a lot to do with detoxification. It has a lot to do with producing bile, and the gallbladder stores our bile for us. And then energetically, these organs have really different functions. So in traditional Chinese medicine, the liver is in charge of being like the army general. It really likes plan, it really likes structure. It really likes to create the boundaries and structure that are needed to get you to your goals. The liver is a lot about planning and allocating. And yeah, it's called the army general in traditional Chinese medicine because it likes to plan out a map and to see, what resources do I have? Where do I need to be going in order for things to function optimally? And our gallbladder has a lot to do, our liver has a lot to do with planning, but our gallbladder is the yang aspect, which is a lot to do with action. So you can kind of see two different pathologies here. Someone might be really good at dreaming and envisioning their future and making plans, but maybe they have a really hard time acting on it. And that's a gallbladder pathology. Maybe they just are so confused about what the future holds and they're kind of just throwing spaghetti at the wall and doing all these actions. That tells me they need liver support and their gallbladder is actually working just fine. If people are like totally stalled out, they have no direction forward, they have no idea where they want to go and they're not taking action, that tells me that both the wood element needs a whole lot of love. So you can kind of start to segment, what area needs more support than others. And then the emotion of the wood element is anger. So we feel this, I describe this as when I talk about the wood element, we think about like this flower. In the winter, it roots and the roots are really thick and they're really rooted in the ground. And that's like our foundations in our nervous system. But now we have to grow upward and gravity is now working against you growing upward. It's really frustrating to grow upward and have it to be incremental change. And this is like the slow and steady wins the race, this step by step energy, climbing up the mountain energy. And it's frustrating, and people don't like sitting in it, especially when we live in more of an instant gratification culture. So typically, the liver and wood element is the most out of balance for almost everyone in modern day society because we're so used to instant gratification. We're so used to things being done instantly. Amazon delivers within like hours at this point. We can look up anything we want on the internet. And now this spring season is in direct conflict with our instant access entire universe that we've created. So it really is this time of year that really tests our patience and people get really angry. So what you'll notice is that people are way worse road rage. So if you're driving, especially in Massachusetts, be really mindful that people are probably going to be more aggressive. If you're walking down the street, people might be more aggressive as well. If you are dealing with any kind of like customer service representative, like make sure that you are really grounding your energy so you aren't more explosive, so that you can go into these situations with grace, even when it is frustrating. And what I tell people who are doing any kind of liver work is to be really cognizant of having a creative practice, because anger and creativity are different sides of the same coin. So you can get angry and frustrated and yell at people and really try to bend reality to be the way you want it to be, or you can channel that energy into creativity. And we tend to think of creativity as like drawing or different art forms like dancing or painting, where creativity can be making a recipe. It can be picking up a book that you weren't sure if you were going to like. It can be just brushing your teeth with a different hand. Like creativity is just making a different choice than what you normally do. So just finding ways to be creative in your day-to-day life is super important this time of year, because it's going to help break up some of that stagnancy that you're going to be inevitably feeling. And then we talked a little bit about this, but sense is eyesight. So literal eyesight has a lot to do with liver health. So anytime anyone is having like blurring vision, always thinking about liver support. Anytime I do any liver work on myself, my vision gets so much better, which is amazing. But also eyesight in terms of future vision planning. How do I see myself in the future? What am I working towards? What is the plan? So that has a lot to do with liver energy as well. So it's a lot about, again, like I think about this analogy I heard before about building IKEA furniture. Like if you don't have a picture of what you're building, how do you know what you're trying to put together? This is the exact embodiment of liver energy. It's having the manual to say, this is what I'm actually building towards. I have direction, I have purpose, I have structure that's going to help get me there. So again, the theme's like a lot of discipline. And sometimes that can feel a little annoying. So now we're going to go into some supportive practices that are really great for liver health. Again, traditional Chinese medicine has a whole philosophy on nutrition that's really different from Western nutrition, but leafy greens are wonderful in general, and they are especially important this time of year. Leafy greens are super good for our liver. So anything that is that like deep green color. So what you're seeing in this picture too, like the rainbow chard, the Swiss chard, the kale, the arugulas, anything that has that like deep, deep green is going to be super beneficial for your liver. We know things like dandelion greens and collard greens are really supportive for promoting bile flow. And we know how important bile is to bind out different toxins out of the body and super important for detoxification. One of the huge reasons that people struggle with chronic health issues is that they don't have adequate flowing bile. And our liver makes bile. So really important to incorporate these foods, especially this time of year when this organ is really active and needs more support. Radishes are really great too. And anything also that has this like deep red color. So beets are really good, cherries are really good, and they tend to be really good this time of year too. So making sure we're including more of these foods in our diet than maybe that we have, especially in the winter when we're not eating as much like raw greens, you can incorporate a little bit more of those now. And then consuming sour foods and astringent foods like lemons, super, super important for liver health. The flavor of the wood element is sour. And it's because these sour foods, again, they really help stimulate bile flow. And energetically in traditional Chinese medicine, these ancient philosophers really understood that these foods were really, really important for liver health. So whether you're having a salad dressing with lemon in it or you're waking up and drinking lemon water, these are really important practices for the spring. Again, not only to energetically support our liver, but they're really important for bile flow. Lemons are especially great for bile flow. That can help with detoxing. And our need to detox is more elevated in the spring, both physically and emotionally. It's a great time to do any kind of detoxification work for your liver physically. And it's not a coincidence why spring cleaning occurs this time of year, because we're really detoxing and purging the things that are in our household that no longer serve us, and maybe cleaning up some things that are in our immediate surroundings and environment. So, incorporating these sour foods and these astringent foods, like radishes and astringent food, is very, very good for this time of year. Every year, I get in this like mode that I make this radish and arugula pea salad with this lemon olive oil dill dressing, and it just like hits the spot for all spring. I make it like a few times a week, and it's pretty amazing. So just incorporating more foods like that. And then the liver is associated with, every organ system is associated with different structures in the body. So the liver is associated with your tendons. So again, it's like this bridge between the muscle and the bone. Excuse me. Just like it is our bridge between winter and summer. So again, we're seeing the liver in this role that's really the in-betweens of things. And any activity that's going to be stretching and flexing our muscles is going to be really great for the liver this time of year. The liver really likes strength training. And this is something that Julie can absolutely touch on about how important strength training is for us. And everyone's strength training needs are really different. Some people do better with lighter weights and lighter weights and more reps. Some people do better with the opposite. So honoring your own unique physiology in this realm, what is going to be best for you for exercise. But the liver really likes that like tension and release. Also super beneficial to process anger, which is inevitably going to come up a little bit more right now. So making sure you're just incorporating those practices where there is that tension and letting go is going to help really move that liver energy pretty effectively. And on our community and during our nervous system regulation sessions, we talked about that fight response where you clench your muscles and you clench, and you can go start your fists, you work to your biceps, triceps, and you clench, 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 and then you release. And you can do that with the inhale and the exhale. And that really helps us work through a fight response for the nervous system. So, really important, especially as you're feeling more of that frustration coming up, honoring those practices. You can do that as many times as you need throughout the day. You can do it sitting in the car safely, in traffic, just clenching and releasing to process this anger in a really healthy way. And then honoring the balance of growth and patience. So, this is the flower that isn't yet in full bloom. Understanding that we are not in full summer yet, that we're getting there. That flower is budding, and it feels so nice to be in the sunshine and have our little leaves open again. But we aren't fully there yet. And just really honoring and recognizing that we don't quite have the energy to do everything we want to yet. And it is okay to give yourself that incremental change moving forward. What I tell people is whatever you did the week before, you can do like one more thing the following week, but you can't go from running 2 days a week outside to 5 days a week. You're going from 2 days a week outside to 3 days. Like, let it be that slow incremental change. And yeah, just remember, like, this energy is challenging. People around you, especially like the general masses who have no idea what's going on and are just more reactive to what their environment is, are going to be really agitated and really annoyed. And if you can find your grounding that you established in the winter, and you can come back home to yourself and really check in and be honest with yourself about, what am I actually ready for? What would feel good to slowly grow into? And be really clear on what is it that I'm working towards? Like, what is it that I want to be able to, by the summer, have fully accomplished, so I can run around in the summer and hang out with everyone and spend time with friends and not sleep as much. Like, you got to figure out what that version of summer looks like for you, physically, metaphorically, emotionally, and what structure do you need in place now in order to get there. So a really nice visualization might be imagining yourself in that summer embodiment. what does this full manifestation of what you're building towards look like? And what are the steps that you need to do now in order to get there? These slow action steps, one by one.
I love it. I have questions. Go
Oh
ahead.
my gosh, of course.
I know some other people have questions. Interestingly enough, one of my friends who couldn't join tonight, it's because and now I know what to tell her. She's got some GI issues.
Oh, yes.
Right. She's moved right into that spring energy, or
Yes.
into that. Wait, which go back to that thing. Yeah. Oh
So
my
it's
God.
the earth
Love it.
energy. This
Like
is
into my September. I've decided my whole birthday month is the new season, the fifth season.
the late summer. Yeah. Well, it is. That's right.
Right. My birthday month has its own season. But I mean, that's the thing, the stomach issues that are happening with a lot of people. I was coughing all day today after I had been running around.
Yeah.
And so even understanding it's the body's way of saying you've got to slow down. And I'm going
Mhm.
to slow you down one way or another. If you're not going to listen to me, I will force you.
Yeah, the body, it will force you. And I know people sometimes get nervous. They're like, "Oh my gosh, how am I going to know if I'm doing too much?" I'm like, "Oh, you'll know." So the body will definitely tell you. And I will say too, the most common presentation of more of like an IBS picture is people who are really in their wood energy. They're very type A. They're very go, go, go. Tend to be really frustrated, really angry, and they have chronic digestive issues. So we know a lot of people like that. This is like one of the most common diagnoses in TCM is wood overacting on earth, which is that digestive presentation.
I
Yeah.
think too, one of the things I liked is if we're talking about planning for anything or strength training or anything, I mean, you can't just go from doing nothing to, suddenly lifting huge amounts of weights and lots of reps at a big amount. You're going to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, everything is of course, when we do our plans and we know somebody's physiology, we'll recommend something. But sometimes for people that are type A, I'll say do something like Pilates, which has the resistance, which is technically strength training, but it's a lighter resistance. But you have a plan. So there's a routine that you're going through. And so that can help you with your mind as well of the IKEA furniture, how many breakups have probably happened from people putting together IKEA furniture? A lot. It's like a joke, right?
Yes.
People try to do it. But if you just slow down and say, listen, this is going to take us 10 times longer than we think it's going to, and we need to look at these directions for what they're worth, like before we even start, and to really slow down because you can't rush it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I feel like IKEA is such a good analogy because I can't tell you how many times I've just been like, "Oh, who cares about the instruction? I'll just figure it out." And then I build a really messed up dresser. And it's just, then you're like, "Oh no." And now it's too late because none of this is going to come apart and go back together. And that's like the full embodiment of not utilizing wood energy well. Like you have to use the patience, you have to know what you're building towards, you have to have a plan. Otherwise, it just feels really chaotic and sad.
It's interesting because even for people that we know that are sort of skeptical of TCM and this type of process, you just feel it. You can feel the energy. You see that there's the shift. You understand there's the shift. Obviously, if you're in Boston, you're seeing the sad daffodils attempting to come up through, I mean, on Saturday it was quite nice. And then, oh boy, by Saturday night, Sunday, anything that had attempted to sprout was already dead. So
Yeah.
it's, this energy where you actually start thinking it's like it's too soon, don't blaze forth, just
Mhm.
hold back a little bit, but make your plan.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the flowers too soon. It's so true. Yeah, if you try to do it too soon. Oh, but spring does this in so many ways. Like we'll have those beautiful days where it's like 55 degrees and you're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Oh my gosh." And then it will be 13 degrees again. And you're like, "What?" So this is the incremental, like move forward, push back of spring that we're in this energy for a little bit. So it will continue and it does get easier as the transition goes on, but we really are in like the height of it right now. And it's tough. It's really tough. Oh, and what I forgot to mention is there are physical signs that you can look out for. I think I mentioned this earlier. I get an eye twitch for like a week every single year. It hasn't happened yet. I'm sure it's going to. Muscle twitches are really common. Headaches are super common. Increases in blood pressure are very common. The typical like seasonal allergies are really common. Eye floaters, you'll maybe start to see more of them, especially if you have issues with detoxification. That's a pretty telltale sign. From people who don't have them, they're like, what are you talking about? Anyone who has them knows what I'm talking about. They look like little squigglies in your vision. And sometimes it can be difficulty digesting fats. And often people are waking up between like 1 to 3 in the morning if they're having issues in this area. So those are symptoms. If you're experiencing those things, that your liver energy is, or your wood energy, but maybe your liver or gallbladder is a little bit off.
Yeah, and I like the idea of just green
Yeah, that's amazing.
food, hiking in nature if you can. So I have noticed, I mean, as most people know, that I've spent the majority of my adulthood in California, and being in the Northeast winter, moving into spring has been much more difficult for me. Like this year has been harder. And last year was really hard, but before I never, there was less of a transition, such a stark transition in San Francisco because you're not going from 20 degrees to 60. You're pretty much at 60 every day. So you still feel the energy and you feel the shift, and the days are shorter, the days are long, moving into being longer. We have the solstice on the 20th. After then, that's going to be the equal day and night. And then after March 20th, we have more light than dark. But
Yeah,
right now we do have more dark than light, no matter where you, well, I mean, if you're in this hemisphere, you got more.
that's right. I actually, that was one of my questions that someone wrote in, who couldn't make it tonight, was saying, what about Florida? Like Florida is somewhere that's like, similar to California, like it has a really steady climate. So what do their transitions look like? And it's interesting. We can kind of get into the location of different energies. Like Florida is really humid, so people tend to have more earth based pathologies there and fire, and it's hot. So you can kind of tell like what diseases will come up more prevalently in certain areas. But for them, like their issues are going to be more manifested in like the polarities of summer and winter. You're going to feel those polarities a little bit more. Like the shoulder seasons, like us, they affect us so strongly because we are a four-seasoned place in New England. But where more consistent climates are going to feel like when it's really hot for a long time and people are like, oh my gosh. But then, Julia, as you've told me recently, like those San Francisco nights that get really cold, people are like, oh my gosh, like what is happening? So it's, you feel those polarities more than where we are on the East Coast, where we feel the shoulder seasons more polarities. So every place is a little bit different, but it was a great question, because it does affect everyone differently. Yeah, and I'm happy if anyone has any other questions, we can answer those too. And I know we have a couple as well.
I do have some, but anybody? And you can feel free to use the chat
Oh
if you
yeah.
want to. You can just chat it to Maddie if you want.
Mm, yes.
Want to be anonymous?
Anonymous.
I do think it's the pushing up for me. It's like also understanding that energy. And I think it was really useful. Even today, I was running around trying to get stuff down. I could feel the energy of people being really like, I felt like the pace was quicker.
Yeah.
Right? People were really, like, pushing people, like, on Newberry, and you could feel kind of the anger, and then I went into a place, and it was, like, 3 times to get something done that should have just taken, like, really only 10 minutes, and then it's like you could feel the other people getting frustrated too, like, "I'm so sorry, I don't know why, like, I keep doing this." It's like, "It's okay. Just take a deep breath. I have time. It's not a worry. We'll just redo it again." Right? I'm like, let me just sit down and double check everything before I go. But to like just to that kind of energy to just understand like it's going to take longer.
Mhm. Yeah, setting your expectation.
Know it beforehand. When you have your expectations set for anything, it's so much better. But when we were talking about even how I had done some purpose calls last week and people who want everything done all at once, they want their health immediately better. Well, it didn't take 3 weeks for your health to get to the state that it is, right? So it's not going to take 3 weeks to fix it. Or if you've been in a job that you don't like for 20 years and you want to immediately have a change, it doesn't really work that way. So a lot of people in the spring want to start making that change because it's the same thing. It's like the growth energy starts popping up. You're like, okay, I don't want to have another year where I'm feeling this way.
Yeah,
And now
absolutely.
suddenly overnight, you want everything to change. And it's okay, that's really great, but you can take baby steps to something. You'll feel so much better if you can just even do one small thing and know you accomplished that one small thing. So if a list of 100 things, there's no way you're getting through all 100. That's going to frustrate you more than if you just put two things down on your list and then you check them off.
Yeah, it
It's
makes
just
such a huge difference. And I think even just being the presence that allows people to do that, like with that example you were talking about today, when someone's like, oh my gosh, I've just been trying, and to hold that presence of, no, it's okay, take your time. Because people are feeling that external energy pressure so strongly, or like, oh my gosh, I have to accomplish all this health things right now. And no, actually, you don't. When people feel like they actually have that permission to slow down, it's like such a weight, such a relief. Like, oh my gosh, thank you, because this entire universe is pressuring me right now. So if we can be like this aware group of people who's like, oh my gosh, no, take your time, that can do a lot of good in the world.
I remember you had a very similar chart on like in your acupuncture clinic. And actually part of our reports, we go into people's constitution, which affects it as well. So if somebody's a double fire and then, they're kind of feeling off in the fire season, we can get into that very specific too.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, I see Kayla's got a chat.
Oh, thank you so much, Kayla. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you feel calm. Yeah, that's
Um,
the whole vibe. I mean, just to know that these energies are inherently happening, you can relax into it. Like this is happening for me and it's okay. But yeah, Julie, you're totally spot on. We include this now in all our reports, the constitution types. And it's such a beautiful way of understanding yourself and what you start to get, like what seasons may impact you a little bit more, what seasons you're going to thrive in and be like, oh my gosh, this is my time, this is my season, what health conditions you might be more prone to, what symptoms you can look out for. So, yeah, the five element system is pretty amazing.
and then not ignoring things like today, I started coughing after that thing that I was doing. And I was going to go to the gym and do my little sprint training. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to do something else. I actually did some light strength training because I was like, today is not the day to like max out, sprinting on a treadmill. It's because I'm coughing. So it's just listening immediately, not trying to push through it. There are days I'm all about like pushing through some things sometimes, but not in this season, not when we're like, we can't.
Absolutely.
We have that check, the little bit of a check. I had a lung check.
A long check. Yeah, the metal element was talking to you today. It always will.
It
Uh,
always will. What other questions? I had one other question. I mean, I know I did have a question about does it food and what if you can't get, the leafy greens?
if you can't get them fresh and organic for whatever reason, frozen works just fine. Spinach is great, another good option. And you can get creative. I mean, and it's really like any leafy green. Teas work great too. You guys know I'm obsessed with drinking tea. So any kind of tea with herbs in it is great. Like I've been drinking a lot of rosemary tea. Dandelion tea is fantastic for the liver. Um, yeah, you
Mm.
can do it with fruits. You can do it with those citruses, any kind of salad dressings. You can do it with cherries. You can do it with beets. So there's a lot of different ways you can incorporate liver foods. That's for sure. And I had a question about what are like liver practices that you can do to support detoxification practices. We all know I'm like also obsessed with tea and detoxification. So there's a lot of really cool things you can do to support your liver. So the liver test that we look at, and what physicians look at as well, typically ALT and AST. Um, Typically, you're not going to see signs of stalled liver pathways on those blood tests unless things are really significant. So it's absolutely a good thing to rule out. But most of the time, we have stalled liver pathways that don't show up on blood work tests. So, this is where understanding your symptoms and understanding what's going on with your health conditions is really, really important. So, working on your liver can be anything from supplementation. There's like NAC, the precursor to glutathione, is great.
Good for aging
Glutathione,
too.
that's right, absolutely. Um, and glutathione itself is good, although there are some thoughts about like, do you supplement that or the precursors? B vitamins are super important. Amino acids are super important for detoxification. So making sure we're having enough protein, whether that's animal based or vegetarian based, doesn't matter. It's great either way. And there are practices that you can do that are a little bit more advanced that I would definitely check in with a healthcare provider to make sure it's right for you. But liver flushes monthly are intense, but they are really great for stimulating bile flow. So that's something you can think about. And coffee enemas are really wonderful as well. But again, you want to be sure that that is something that is applicable and right for you. It's definitely not right for everyone. But there can be, yeah, a lot of practices to support your liver health.
You and your liver cleanses. But I mean, they work. They work.
I have seen shocking things. Yeah, I did a coffee enema today, actually.
Castor oil. Good question.
Oh, yes. That people might be overdoing it. So castor oil is great. Castor oil is one of the things that I was thinking about this today. There are practices that are wonderful. That just maybe it's just not in alignment for you, or it's not something that like you do per se. Castor oil has never been my go-to. But it can be really beneficial to do it over certain body parts. So the liver can be really helpful if you're working on detoxification practices, but I would be doing that like once a week. I don't, castor oil is strong. So you do not need to be doing that every day. There's no chance. So I think once a week, if you're going to do a big pack, some people do the small ones in their belly button. They'll put like a little bit in their belly button, a little patch over it. And I think a lot of people are seeing that on the internet right now. And that, since it's a smaller area, you can think about doing it more frequently. But I'm never a fan of big detox practices like that daily. I think it's different for everyone. And I need to know some other things that are going on with your labs to know, like, how much are we pulling out of the body? What's going on there? But general rule of thumb is like not every day and not most days a week.
Yeah, not overdoing it at all. I mean, that's what I love about traditional Chinese medicine is it's so balanced. There are
Yep.
checks, natural checks and balances. But I mean, even the LinkedIn post that I wrote today, which or yesterday, about we have stopped listening to our own bodies. I mean, I run my labs pretty regularly, and that is important. But at the end of the day, we have to really be in tune with what is working for us. Like we do actually naturally know. Like cold plunges were not my thing. And for a long time, I was forcing myself to do it. And then I realized I felt awful. This what it just was. It actually doesn't feel good. No, it's not super fun. No, I don't need to push through it. Like I can honor that that's just not my thing. Saunas are more my thing. And then when
True.
you
Yes.
start understanding your constitution and your own physiology, and you're like, that makes so much sense that that's the thing. Or even foods, like, diet.
Absolutely. Giving yourself the permission to just be like, I actually really hate that wellness practice is a really nice thing to do for yourself. So,
Yes, I don't like castor oil. It was recommended to me when I had fibroids, and I was like, this is messy and annoying. But I would stick like LED lights and like strap my facial mask on my stomach.
yeah.
It's actually, I mean, it is a healing mechanism.
Of
But we
course.
all find our things that work for us. And like you were saying today, you can't do it all.
No.
I mean, if you had a list, I mean, there's actually this funny meme going around with like all the things. And I think you posted it once on your Instagram. It's like the 5,000 things. And I don't even think I'm exaggerating. All the things you're supposed to do every day to live longer or whatever. Even in San Francisco, I met a bunch of people who like, are massive biohackers and just the stuff that I'm like, but what about just relaxing? Oh no, what? No, what? Why would I do that? It's like everything's kind of like you forgotten about life. You forgot to
Yeah.
just live. So part of all of this is just understanding that we're supposed to be in tune with nature and ourselves and live. Like walk down the street and recognize what's happening with the seasons.
That's right. Such a beautiful way to put it. You're right. We have And I think understanding this, like the energy dynamics a little bit more, it helps you be like, oh, like connecting the dots. Like, oh yeah, this is what's happening. So I don't know. I really hope that this was helpful. I hope that people feel like they understand themselves a little bit more and understand this energy a little bit more. And if you come across anyone, your friends, your family, who's like, I don't know what's happening and I'm going to lose my mind, you can tell them it's the spring. It's time to really just plan and be embodied in this energy. And you will get through it. Just remember that there is a really beautiful summer heading your way, and you just got to pace yourself to get there.
It's gonna be awesome. All right. Well, I mean, I don't know if there's no more questions. We do have another webinar in 2 weeks,
That's
which is
right.
great on longevity. So we'll talk about that. And that's also a really interesting one. And again, a lot of people who are trying to extend their lifespan and their health span, and how can you do it in a more natural way?
That's right. I'm really excited for that. And we also have our retreat coming up the first weekend in May, May 1st to 5th. And we would love,
Spring retreat.
yes, it's going to
Which
be
actually is gonna be great because it is in a magical forest, and I mean, as Maddie knows, I really am very particular about where I like to stay and the environment and even the organic linens and the whole thing, and so we did find a space that's got it all, so that's pretty great, and then our members can go. We've got a little event in the Back Bay on the 20th of this month, which is the equinox, the spring equinox. I can't believe we were able to get that date.
I know it's amazing. We'll be able to celebrate the spring all together.
I know. So that's and it will, and that's the date,
Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
20th. So we're not there yet. So that's also important to remember. We are not there yet. We are at the 4th.
That's right. We got a way to go.
Here we go, here we go. But no, this is, yeah, planning time.
Right.
Planning time. All right. Well, anybody can always feel free on the community to ask us questions if you are a member. If you're not a member, you can book a discovery call if you want to learn more about what we do and who we are, or you can visit revhealth.com, REVE health.
Thanks, everyone.
French for dream.
Oh, that's right. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I'm going to stop recording.